Hi, and welcome back to the Knittervention. I'm Erin White, and today is less of a podcast video and more of a tips of the trade mini something or other. I'm going to be going over circular needle management. Like many knitters out there, I have a multitude of circular needles that I have acquired over the years, and like many out there, I did not have any kind of storage system or organization of them at all. They'd be in projects all over the house. They'd be squirreled away in certain spots that I would put them there, and I thought it was reasonable, and I would totally be able to find that needle in 5 minutes or 5 weeks from now, and obviously it just didn't happen. Or they'd all end up in a single bag in a giant spaghetti tangle mess that made it impossible to find needles quickly and of the right size and the right gauge, because sometimes the markings would rub off, especially if it was a bamboo needle or some metal needles that were used for a very long time. The markings would just rub off, and it would just make it very difficult to find the needles that I would need, and then I would end up buying new needles, even though I knew that I had that exact gauge and size somewhere in my house. But I just didn't have the time or the willingness to go and find it, so I would just buy a new one, and then I would have 2 or 3 of the same kind of needle in the house, just somewhere. So what I found that works for me is something that was mentioned in a subreddit on Reddit by a Redditor on the R Yarn subreddit, and when this was mentioned, it made a lot of sense. And I'm going to get into exactly what that suggestion is in just a moment, because before you can start using this organizational tool, you need to first attack that giant knot of needles that's, in your bag, or find what needles you can that have been swirled around the house and kind of get them into one place. And once you have them in that one place, you're going to use a handy tool like one of these guys, which are Gauge Finder. You can find these at any large box craft store. You can find them online. More importantly, you can find them at your local yarn shops. Most time they'll be branded, like this one is from the Argyle shop in Brooklyn, New York, and this one is from Yarnia in New Jersey. But they basically do the same thing. This one is just for needle gauge sizes, and each hole is associated with a US size and a millimeter size. This one has the same thing, but it also has a handy dandy knitting gauge or crochet gauge window that you can use to measure your knitting gauge on a project that you're working on, if you actually do swatches. And if you do, bless your heart, because I hate swatching. So anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to take that giant spaghetti tangle mess of needles, and the ones that the markings have rubbed off on, you're going to just fit them in, find where they fit snugly, and that is the size that they are. And then you're going to organize all of your needles into specific, their sizes, not necessarily the lengths. You can get into that detail if you want. I didn't. I just separated them by size. So like I said, these are handy for when you just can't find the markings. Bamboo needles, metal needles, sometimes DPNs don't always have the markings on them. So that's where this comes in handy. So after you find all the needles and you get them organized into their different sizes, what you are going to end up doing is getting yourself an organizational folder. Now, a lot of the name brand places that manufacture needles, like Chiagoo, Knit Picks, Knitter's Pride, etc., they will have organizational folders that are pretty, and they have the nice designs, and the zipper, and you open them up and there's folders, like little pockets on either side with the needle sizes that you can store your needles in. And that, if that works for you, that's great. What I find with those is that they are a little bit more expensive because they have the fancy name on them and they go specifically with those needles, but they're a little bit more expensive. And they also don't hold the number of needles that I need them to hold. They just don't have enough room in there because of how the pockets are just one right on top of another. It just doesn't create enough space for my needles. And I would need to get 2 or 3 of those folders basically to fit what I have. And some needles, once they get past a certain gauge size, they're just not going to fit in those pretty folders. They're not. If you only have a few needles, that's perfect for you. I would say go for it. So what I ended up doing, what this Redditor on the R-Yarn subreddit suggested, was to use, and I went with exactly with what she suggested, was a Bass Pro Shop, tackle organizer folder. This is obviously for fishing. It's a fishing tackle, but it comes in 3 sizes. This is the medium one. There's one a little bit smaller, and there's one that's obviously a little bit larger. And this comes with 10 Ziploc binder envelopes or bags that come with it. I ordered this with an extra set of 10 bags, and the whole thing cost me like around $20. Like, it did not cost that much at all. And I am not going to need to get another one. I'm not. If anything, I just need to buy extra bags for it. And I went through with a silver, and I should use a black permanent marker, but I used a silver permanent marker pen to label each bag with the US size and the millimeter size, and just organize all of my needles in there as needed. And you can see I have some other brands in there. I have one that has a whole bunch of bamboo needles, so all my size 11s are bamboo needles, and it goes all the way up to my largest ones in here right now are US 19, and I have a number of extra bags just in case I get needles of sizes that I didn't currently have, and I put them in order. The big thing for me is remembering to stick them back in when I'm done using them. So that's something that I am currently working on, but I'm getting better at. This makes it easy to find the needles that I need quickly. I don't have them separated by length, so if I need one of a certain length, I have to obviously pull them out and figure out which size I need. But it makes a big difference, and this particular method can hold a lot of needles. You don't necessarily need to go to Bass Pro. Any outdoor fishing shop should have something similar. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to get the expensive name brand one because it's pretty and it's shiny and it goes with those needles. I mean, you can if you want, but for me, I like saving money when I can, and this is one way to do it, and this is one way to really maximize your money. It's cheap. It holds a lot. It holds all the needles that I need, and it holds them easily. It's compact. It's mobile. It's easy to find, and it just makes my life a little bit easier. I have ADHD, so having these set up in this way is wonderful. So like I said, just remembering to put them back when they're done is the big thing. I would also like to point out is that a lot of my needles that are in here are Chiagu red lace needles. That's because in order to store them in here, you have to coil them up. And with Chiagu red lace needles, what I have found is that even when you coil them up, when you take them out, it doesn't keep the coil. So it won't, when you go to knit, it doesn't coil up on you, much like a lot of the plastic needles that are out there, the bamboo needles or the other brands of needles that only have that plastic cord between between your circulars. So as you can see, it starts off coiled, and then it doesn't keep the memory of that coil, which is wonderful. And if I were to show you just as an example here, one of my bamboo needles, that coil will stay there forever. And it will, I don't find it fun to knit with that. I don't. I mean, I have it because, well, just in case, they're my backup needles, but they're not the best, in my humble opinion. So that is my pro tip for the day. I would like to say that I'm not being paid to endorse Bass Pro Shop or Chiagoo or the local yarn shops that I mentioned. These are just tips of the trade that I found work for me, in my opinions only. So make sure to click like and subscribe for future videos, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Happy knitting!